Ya 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 aya ya 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 nungu simawatigun nungu simawatigun sigurita bisik samingi ya 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 aya ya 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 dainik sa kanyang ilang dainik sa kanyang ilang pisimuna ikiyak tangi ya 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 aya ya 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 dainik
Ubumi, Quyanaq, Qaikaffi, Pangma, Nunaptingnun, Uvagut Margaret Elias. Good afternoon. Welcome to Where We Live Now. I'm your host. My name is Margaret Elias, and on today's episode we have Shirley Kisoun. {Inuit}.
Nakurunga.
How are you?
Nakupaluktunga. Yeah.
So, the way I like to start every episode when we're doing our show is I like the guests to tell us who they are the exact same way they would if they were talking to an elder.
Okay.
So if you could just let me know who you are, who your family is, where you're from, where they're from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uvagut Shirley Kisoun, Inuvik me, I guess. Uvagut Papa nga Victor Allen, Mama nga Bertha Allen, Papang Inupiat from Alaska, and my mother was a Vuntut Gwichin from Old Crow, Yukon. So basically what I said is, hello, my name is Shirley Kisoun. I'm from Inuvik. My parents are Bertha and Victor Allen. My father was a descendant of Alaska, and my mother is a descendant of the Vuntut Gwichin Nation. So basically, I come from two cultures, but raised in the Inuvialuit culture for part of my life, majority of my life, and for the first for maybe about 6 years of my life, I was raised by my Gwichin grandmother, and there's a tradition and stories behind being raised by grandparents. So I'll get to that when I start telling more stories. I can go on and on.
So the only thing I know about you, Shirley, besides the fact that you have volunteered, I've seen you at almost every event working. And the other thing is you were the first baby born in Inuvik.
Yes, I was the first baby born in Inuvik, down by the river, in a tent. When this is the story that I've been told many, many times over before, and the biggest part about this story is all the old ladies used to fight over who born me. So, but I know I was born in a tent, that's a fact. So I was born in a tent down by the river in 1956 when the government made the announcement that, we're building a new town, come stake your claim, basically, right? So people heard that and they started moving from the bush, from a Quyanaq from anywhere. A lot of them, you know how today some people say, oh, I'm just going to sign a 1-year contract, and 50 years later they're here. So it was like that long ago. People that first built Inuvik are still here today. You know, and they probably just came to say, tell the government, well, I'll build this town and I'll go back south. But a lot of them are here. And, you know, so the same people, when they went to the came from the bush, they probably said, well, let's check it out for a while. And, you know, if we don't like it, we could always go back. But everybody that came from the bush and everybody that moved from Quyanaq, they ended up staying. And they started pitching up tents all along the river. There's even, my brother even has a picture of our tent down by the river. Yeah, where I was born. You look at it from then to now, big difference. I mean, really you still got your clothesline trying to, you know, I thought, was that me? Was that all my clothes the day I was born? There was a picture of the tent with baby clothes or baby towels and stuff like that. And I had to laugh, and my brother said, maybe that was all your clothes. But yes, I was born down at the river in a tent. And in those days, I guess they had the hospital in Quyanaq, but my parents moved from the bush to come to Inuvik. And didn't make it to Quyanaq, so I was born down by the river in that tent by midwives. Now this is where it becomes interesting. I was given, over the years, I was given several names of all the women who might have borne me and whatever, and even the book of Burnwell Brown makes reference to the first baby being born in Inuvik by the first family, one of the first families, and they mentioned my parents' name. And I don't think he mentioned a midwife, but he just said born by a midwife, by a local midwife. And then I think the last person that I probably got any information from, now I don't even know if this is correct, but my Auntie Emma, God rest her soul, she was 94 years old when she passed, and she lived through a lot of history. And she was basically the one that filled me in all these years about who was my midwife and everything. So, you know, to this day, it doesn't matter who it was, just the excitement and the history that I have behind my birth. How, you know, the history
and you're
behind.
The first baby born in Inuvik.
Yeah.
Which I think Inuvik is pretty special. Yeah.
I'm even older than that 3-tier thing at the park. You know, when Diefenbaker commemorated the town in 1958, he came and said this town is officially called the town of Inuvik, so on and so forth. And this 3-tier thing is representing the Eskimo, the Indian, and the non-natives. That's the three tier in 1958. So when I talk to people and they ask if you're the first baby, or they say, oh, I hear you're the first baby born in Inuvik. Yes, I'm older than Inuvik. If you see that 1958 Diefenbaker, I was 2 years old. So they say, holy smokes. So, you know, so it's good to have some history there. And, you know, I'm proud of what I could
not
share.
that old.
No, it's not. Inuvik is 65. Yeah, 65, Well, it's older than that, but according to the government, when they put the stamp, I guess it's 65. Diefenbaker was prime minister then.
And so you grew up in both cultures, as you said.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that like?
Growing up in two cultures was kind of interesting for me, but then also you can relate that to residential school, you know, because my grandmother took me at a very young age. In those days, it was like tradition when you have a granddaughter or your first, in some traditions, it's your first granddaughter, or your first grandchild. But I was the fourth one, so I don't know why she picked the fourth one, but she picked me to raise me.
Yeah.
Because they already had these, you know, brothers and sisters. Because I guess the oldest ones had to stay home to look after my two younger siblings. So my grandmother took me to raise. She raised me in her culture, in her Gwichin culture. Even though she's from the Yukon, she lived in the Northwest Territories all her life. So she raised me in a culture that she knew, which was here in Quyanaq. So she took me, and right from day one, I lived a Christian life. She taught me to sing, she taught me to pray, and she taught me to speak in her language. And those were the best years of my life. Today, I can still sing and pray in her language, but I lost, like I said, in residential school, you know, you lose your language. Over the years, I kind of not forgot maybe, or never really spoke it, because English is so prevalent in homes these days. What really got me is in 1964 or 64, when my parents got the new house on the hill. I guess they must have planned that time for me to go home now. I got to go to school in Inuvik. So my grandmother said, you got to go home now. Your parents got new home. You got to go to school. So imagine this Gwichin speaking little girl going into an Inuvialuit and English speaking home, and here I am speaking English. I mean Gwichin, and my dad can speak his language, but they couldn't speak to each other. So of course it's English, right? So it took me a while to kind of relate, kind of get used to it. It was hard to understand why, but then as I got older, you know, but the memories still today, I have the best memories of being raised by my grandmother. Yeah.
And I believe you when you say you can still sing and pray, because I've heard you, like, whenever we have that Christmas concert. Yeah, the Gwichin singers.
Yeah, I learned to sing sing her song that she taught me, and I call it the sixth generation song, because it's my grandmother, it skipped my mom, this is me, this is my daughter, my granddaughter, my great-granddaughter. Yeah. So it was a tradition for us to, instead of singing lullabies at night, we sing the song that I was taught, you know. Yeah. So, and then being raised, like, you know, church in those days was part of everybody's life, right?
Yes.
You didn't have your TVs, you didn't have your phones, you didn't have your taxis, your trucks, your strollers like you have today. Everywhere you went, you had to walk. Anything that you did, you had to go with your grandmother, you know. Always be around elders, and that's what I treasure, the memories that I treasure.
Yeah.
And the most precious memories that I have is of our Itzagoho parties. You know,
What's a Itzago party?
it's you know, the insides of the fish, like the pipes and whatever. We used to wait at the river for my grandfather to come back from his fish net. We'd go there with our wheelbarrow, and we don't mind working hard, because we know at the end of that, when we bring the wheelbarrow up to my grandmother's house, we're going to have the best party. Never mind the hot dogs and the marshmallows. It's the piebuck and the eggs. Yeah. The piebuck and the eggs that made the party interesting. And it wasn't only myself and my sister Judy. It was the whole kids in a Quyanaq would come. To this day, there's this friend and I in a Quyanaq. We still call each other Itzago, because when she was small, that's all she did was come to us. We had to kick her out to go home. Yeah, Itzago parties. We still talk about it today. We're over 65, and we say, remember, you still owe me it to go home. Yeah, you know, stories like that. Yeah.
I feel bad. I've never tried pipes and eggs.
Never?
No.
Yeah.
Apparently it's the best. Yeah.
And that's where you know, like, you have to be proud of where you come from, and you have to take time to learn your two cultures, you know. My mother gave up her rights as when she married into the Inuvialuit culture. She recognized herself as an Inuvialuit because she was married and raised her family in that culture. But then, as the years went by, she eventually went back, or, you know, like, started getting involved with her band and going back into her culture and everything. And always reminding us that, you know, don't ever forget where you come from. You come from. You may be living your Inuvialuit lifestyle, but you also have old Crow relatives. Yeah.
Well, I see that in your granddaughter. Yeah, she's very much connected.
Yeah, my granddaughter today, she's, in school you learn to take Inuvialuit and you take Gwichin classes. My phone, shut it off.
It's okay.
Okay. So anyways, when you go to school, you take Inuvialuit and you take Gwichin classes.
Yeah.
So I always told them, I said, it's up to you. You could take Inuvialuit or you could take Gwichin if you want. There was a couple of years where my granddaughter would take the Inuvialuit classes, but she was more interested in the Gwichin side. And to this day, I wouldn't say she's fluent, but she's really learning. She consults a lot with our relatives in Old Crow and say, when somebody tells her something, say, I'm going to phone so-and-so and see if it's right, how you spell it and how you say it, because different dialects too.
It is.
In Inuvialuit, you have different dialects. Gwichin, you have different dialects. You have different ways. So, yeah. But and then just reverting back to the Inuvialuit culture, my father was a very avid storyteller. And anytime we went places, we always, visited elders, and we always were told to, listen to the elders when they tell stories. And I think you know that today, and everybody probably across the north knows it, that my brothers are very good storytellers. Our family, as a matter of fact, is very good storytellers because we come from a book of history, like you don't need to have your encyclopedias or your computer, because the people are your knowledge, and that's what the government has to start recognizing, is that, the people are the knowledge. Throw those books away. The universities, they do thesis. Why don't they do thesis? They're like, bring elders down and there's your thesis. That's what the elders were saying all these years. My dad and my parents used to travel around. All of my dad's been to Hawaii, Australia, New Zealand, speaking in front of people, for our people, and about our people. That's what needs to come back.
Yes.
Instead of like the government thought, oh, well, it's cheaper for us to write all this history in books. But people don't read these days.
Our knowledge is in oral storytelling.
Yes, yeah, oral storytelling is the best way. So as any chance I get, I
was talking to Lorna Elias today, and she was saying, boy, you must hear good stories. Huh?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I never would have thought.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a selfish feeling, like, yeah, I do. I feel so lucky.
Yeah.
But the best part about it is it's all being recorded.
Yes, it's all being recorded, and that's what should, like a long time ago when the elders used to tell stories, they didn't have these kind of technology, like they didn't have, all they had was, and they couldn't even read and write. So all they had to do was tell each other stories, and then where did they go after that, So it's good that the stories that were carried on to me or listening to my elders, where I'm able to tell them, and plus my own stories.
Yeah.
You hear so many stories of your ancestors long ago, and I find it so interesting. And the thing that I really find different in the two cultures that I was raised in is in the Inuvialuit, well, we say Inuvialuit because of the identity of our people, but really it is Inupiat. We are Inupiat from Alaska. There's a big, long history there. But anyways, coming from two cultures, the big difference between those cultures is that the Inuvialuit, in the culture of today with the Inuvialuit, is they name their babies, right? They automatically give them an Inuvialuit name. As soon as a baby is born, you run to an elder, and they name that baby. In the Gwichin culture, it's not so prevalent because their names are already like their last names, right? So they don't, some of them do, but it's not like it was just like you weren't respecting your elders if you didn't run to an elder after your baby was born, because right now, like my grandchildren right now, they got their names. You know, we didn't go to my Auntie Emma to name the baby, then you don't go to anybody else. You basically go to the eldest person in the family.
Yeah.
And then if they give you permission to say, well, you could name if you want, you know. So you kind of go to the elders. And we were lucky in those days that we were naming our babies that all the elders were alive.
Yeah.
Now there's no elders to.
That's
you know.
not true. You guys are.
Well, I mean, I don't think I'd be old enough to name a baby. You know, I'd feel funny. You know, because I mean, just not long ago I was running around trying to look for elders. Today I'm an elder, but I don't think I would have that naming capacity yet.
I understand what you mean, because when I think back to Tuck and I think back to like Shepherd Felix, you know, like those were our elders.
Yeah.
And they've passed on. So I know I understand what you mean. But I'm trying to get into the mindset that you guys, to my daughter, would be the elders.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I'm trying to, it's like a moving forward type of thing. Yeah. And it's my goal to get as many stories as I can.
And I think another thing that's really important these days, which I don't know if, and it's one thing that they should bring into the schools, is teach the children when they're young about genealogy. Because it's important these days to know where you come from. It's important to know your culture. Because a long time ago you heard about forced marriages. You heard the stories that the Indians and the Eskimos fought and you couldn't marry an Eskimo, you couldn't marry an Indian. A lot of them today, you know?
Well, yes, and you pick one.
Yeah.
You pick one. I think people are moving into that you can be both.
Yeah.
Like you could, like my mom is Gwichin. I can speak Gwichin to my mom.
Yeah.
And my dad is Inuvialuit, and I speak Inuvialuit. I'm not fluent in any of this, but I can say Dringwinzi.
Yeah.
Like I can talk to my mom. Yeah. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. To grow.
It was in there's a story from one of my elders. She's passed on, but the stories is like even my own relatives, when they got married, they were shy to get married because they're going to marry another culture. You know, and I'll give you an example. When my parents got married, you know, my dad was an excellent dancer. He come from dancing family, right? Had lots of friends that liked to dance. Anyways, they got married in a Quyanaq. And there was only, like today, you could have 100 people in your bridal party, right? You got to have the fanciest dresses and the best flowers and look your best and whatever. Well, in church, there was only 4 of them. There was my mom, my dad, my aunt, and my uncle.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a feast and dance. Right after that, they went in their boat and went to the bush. That was their honeymoon. But the thing is, people started trying to come to a Quyanaq because they heard that there was a wedding, so they thought there was going to be dance. And already my parents were gone in the bush. So, you know, it's just those kind of little things that how cute, like I wish that could happen these days, you know. Yes, these days when they get married, it's we got to have everything, and if you don't have it, boy, never mind.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's
coming
a lot
from
of pressure.
Someone who just got married.
Yeah, you know, and then so it's important. Going back to genealogy again, it's really important that our young children today know the meaning of when they're given their Inuvialuit name. It's important for them to know the meaning of it, why they're named, and this name you never ever give away. Because you know, today you hear about people going to court because they don't like their name. They pay thousands of dollars to change their name. This is a name that's going to be given to you for life. You never change your name. You're being ignorant if you do that. You know, so it's important for them to know the meaning of their given Indigenous name. I guess it's prim and proper to say Indigenous these days because Aboriginal is no more, so Indigenous. So it's really important to teach them about their Indigenous history in school rather than the Canadian history from long ago. Because I'll give you an example. When I went to school, we learned about the Trojans, the Spartans, the Romans. Who were those? We learned about the explorers, Radisson and Groseilliers. We didn't know who Mackenzie was. We didn't know who Franklin was. We didn't even know about our schooners.
Yeah.
We never knew about our history in school. So, like, even today, there's hardly any history. Like, it's coming.
It is.
It's
they have
coming.
the Northern Studies.
Yeah, they have the Northern Studies, but it's coming a bit too late. It should have came a long time ago. It should have came 3 generations ago, where we would be able to teach our kids right from.
I was listening to you talking before, and you were talking about how, what did you say, your uncles or your brothers, such good storytellers. Yeah, in your family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who were you talking about?
Oh, sorry, my brother Jerry, and I have 2 brothers, Jerry and Dennis, and both of them were, they're hunters. So of course my dad would take them out hunting and bring them to camps, and always be around elders and telling stories. They listened to stories, So it kind of just got built into them that, someday you're going to be storytellers. My dad used to tell me, you got to sit and listen, because someday you're going to be the one telling stories, So then, and it just rubbed off on us, I guess. Yeah.
So you guys come from a legacy of volunteers.
Yeah. A legacy
storytellers.
of storytellers and volunteers. And, even when I go to visit Old Crow, we're around and we help out because we're trying to give back to the culture that was given to us. I go there sometimes and I feel bad that I'm saying Ali, Alaba and stuff like that, and then they're saying you're in Gwichin country, You're not only Inuvialuit, you're from Gwichin country. So don't ever forget the most interesting and the most heartwarming thing that we grew up with when my mom was alive is she told us, you may have been born in the Inuvialuit culture, but don't ever forget where you come from, and don't ever forget my homeland.
You know what? You've just inspired me. I just had a thought. But, why is it not being taught in schools, or it should be taught in homes? More people should be volunteering. Because when I think back, Jerry's always emceeing.
Yeah.
And when we did there was the fashion show, they didn't have a host.
Yeah.
And you stood there
and
talked about all the clothing. And you were comfortable on the microphone to do that. And that's something that I think that a lot more people should take seriously is volunteering and getting out there and learning how to do these things, because it takes you have to have the knowledge to know what you're talking about in the clothing.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Each clothing had a different artist, yes, but different styles. But you talked about these patterns were passed down from
generation to
generation. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that comes from knowledge that you only get from talking to elders and from knowing and being immersed in your culture.
Yeah.
And
and being involved in your community too.
Yeah, people should take that a lot more serious.
Yes.
Because I never realized it until I just started paying attention. And I only started paying attention because I wanted to know how are you guys doing all of this? And then just listening, volunteering.
I think there's 5 generations of us that volunteer, who started with my mother, and then, just on down. Even Leslie, she starts volunteering now. So I tease people and I say, you not only have 1, you not only have 2, you not only have 3, you have 4 Kisouns now. I'd all volunteer in the community. And, they like it because, sometimes when we have community events, they say, oh, must be let's phone Jerry or let's phone, and it makes you feel proud because they're recognizing you that you've given back to the community. You have these qualities. You care for your people. You care for the cultures. It doesn't matter if it's for Gwichin or Inuvialuit. You're not going to say, oh, I can't help because I'm not you know. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so
So-
I like volunteering, you know. It's,
Yeah.
it gets you out and it keeps you busy, and you get to meet people and you get to tell stories, and you know, you make the tourists happy and they go home with, you know, yeah.
They may never go home. They might come to Inuvik and
Yeah.
on a
I went on a
one-year
couple of
term.
trips this year with a tourist to Tuck. Yeah.
So before we start winding down for the show, would you like to share any stories? Like, do you have a favorite story or two that you like to share?
Well, just growing up in Inuvik, I guess I've seen many years of the town transitioning. We moved from tent town to the 512s. And the 512s in those days was like, that's all we had. So there was 10 of you in a 512, in a two-bedroom.
So it's 5 by 12.
5 by 12, yeah.
Yeah.
5, I don't know how they got 5 by 12, but maybe 5 feet by 12 feet, I'm not sure. 5 whatever, anyways.
Yeah.
The dimensions. So imagine, like, we had no choice. That was the new housing development here. So a lot of people from the river, from when the town was slowly being built, they started moving into these homes, and the 512s was first. And then they started this, this is the best memories that I have, by the way. So they started this new housing development in town. They wanted to build further up, so they started what's called a cooperative housing project, and that's where Co-op Hill comes from. And that's where we spent at least 15 years, all of us, 15 years of our life on Co-op Hill. And we were like one big happy family. There must have been about 20 houses there. So we were just a big block of houses. And we had our own penny carnivals, we had our own dog race, we had our own ski races. If we didn't invite a neighbor, we weren't friends at all. You know, you had to invite all your neighbors. We became family, and still today we're family. And I'm 66 years old, and there's other people that are older than me. We still call each other Co-op Hill kids because that's who we were, and that's who we will be. You know, even today, like I could see some of the people that lived on Co-op Hill, and they say, "Oh, we're still kids." You know, we'll never ever forget. We'll never ever describe ourselves any other way except Co-op Hill kids. So living on the hill there, we became one happy family. You know, we had our own. We even had our own trail down to school. We had our own trail to church. We had our own sliding hills. We had our own everything. We had our own. And then we started, and then new people started coming on the hill. And that's when it just changed forever. You know, the same neighborhood wasn't there. People started building fancy houses, not the kinds that we were used to. So it kind of changed over the years. Today, I find it funny calling it Co-op Hill because it's not the hill that we left.
Brunette.
Yeah, it's Brunette, and yeah, because in those days we didn't have names of our streets.
Yeah.
It was just Co-op Hill, West End, East End. Now today, it's there's addresses and everything, and yeah. The thing is though, but when we were growing up, there was West End kids and East End kids.
There was.
Yes.
I've
And
heard these
just like going
stories.
to school too, the Sam school, one side was Catholics, one side was Anglican. Yeah, so that was hard too.
Very separated.
Yes, very separated. And even when we had religion, we were separated, yeah.
I'm really happy that it's not like that anymore because I've heard the stories
Yes.
and it's more blended now.
It's not like that, but a lot of people are saying they should bring back religion into the schools. And I really think that's important, because today we have no churches. Our churches are, are no more. We don't even have a church to go to.
I think it starts though with the committees,
Yeah,
like the people wanting to.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to start somewhere,
Yeah.
and that somewhere could be in the home, that somewhere could be,
Exactly.
with other groups within the community, and that somewhere could be with volunteers, volunteer and say, let's start this group,
Yeah.
so we could get religion back in the schools because it's so important for young kids to learn about. Because in the old days, that's all our elders learned to speak and write was from the Bible. And a lot of them were named from the Bible.
Look at Укlavik. Укlavik's a great school.
Yes.
When I go in there, I love going there.
Yes.
And I love going into their. I don't know how that place is not a historic site.
I know.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up until probably, when did that big church burn? They had a beautiful church there, the best looking cathedral, I'm sure. You must have seen pictures of it. Yeah. They had a beautiful cathedral there.
Yeah.
I never went to school in Укlavik, but I've seen pictures and heard
I've
stories.
only been in there just a few times. And I walked in there and then just listening to their morning announcements and their morning prayers and all the food. I was like, wow, this community, this community knows what they're doing. They're investing in their youth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was raised by my grandmother and go to church every Sunday, that was the church I went to, was that cathedral. Yeah. And we only never went to church once. Sometimes we went to church 3 times a day. Yeah.
Where did you grow up with your grandmother? Was
In
it
Укlavik. In Укlavik, sorry, in Укlavik, yeah.
Yeah.
My grandmother moved to Укlavik when my mother and my aunt were young. After she lost her husband, she moved to Укlavik because she wanted her kids to go to school. So they went to school, and that's where a lot of these couples today, well, my parents anyways, they that's where they met, a lot of them, they meet in Укlavik because they had a...
That makes so much sense because Укlavik is both Inuvialuit and Gwichin.
Yes, and that's where the residential school was, the Catholics and the Anglicans, and the hospital too.
That makes so much sense now. And this right there is just me learning a little bit more about our history.
And with the residential school era, you hear some good stories and you hear some bad stories. You could have a good conversation one night of elders sitting around and they say, remember this, remember that person, ha 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 ha. They laugh all night. But then there's also sad stories when it comes to language and culture, where you can tell that there's hurt in their heart.
Yeah. What I like to say though is, I think that the teachers, the Ilaharis, the ones that are doing the work now, they're really trying. Because I see the kids in the school now, and they can use phrases and sentences that I couldn't use as a child. And I'm only one generation, maybe 2, above them. And they, I'm really happy when I go into that school and they talk about being yagarunga and they're just so tired. And I had no idea what that was until I started going to the school and hearing them use these terms. So
the thing with a lot of the schools these days, especially in the smaller communities, is they use their elders a lot in the smaller schools. They need to start bringing a lot of the elders in the school so they can share their stories of residential school. Hear it directly from them instead of hearing it from the government and the churches. Hear it directly from them, Sure, some may be happy, some may be sad, like I said, but a lot of it, they have to learn about it.
This being the first time we're having a conversation together, I can tell you have a lot of knowledge in all of this.
The elders say long ago, they said, when their kids have to go to school, or they say, you better get your education. Our elders used to get mad at us and say, I don't know why you say your kids got to get education. Look at me, I got grade 1. My education was the land. My diploma was the land. My dad went to grade 1. Yet he was there's the smartest man. And a lot of the elders from long ago, they retired with 25, 30 years of service in the government, yet they couldn't read or write.
Exactly.
Their education was the land. So it was like an insult to a lot of them found it hard to decipher the fact that, the government pushing education on them when their education is the land. And it's like they didn't want our kids to, didn't recognize the land as part of being your education.
Isn't it funny we've done like a 360 where we're trying to get kids back out on the land?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we need to like these children need some on the land
Yes,
programs.
they do, yeah. And they have good on the land programs
They
now.
do.
Yeah, but that should have started like long
From
ago.
the beginning.
From the beginning, you know,
Yeah.
Brought elders in long ago. You know, a lot of them probably don't know the history of their nanaks and dadaks or their jujus and jujis, you know, because they're so strung up into Canadian social studies, learning about, you know, Canadian history, not so much Indigenous history. You know, I'll give you an example. My dad used to travel around to, and he spoke a lot for the Inuit people from around here. He traveled a lot to the provinces and different countries. And one time he had to, this couple invited him because they were so impressed with him, his presentation that he did there. I guess they invited him to his backyard. And all they used to hear in those days about Inuit was polar bears and igloos, right? So because my dad was an Eskimo, they thought he could build an igloo. So he built an igloo for them out of milk cartons in their backyard. And he used to tell them stories about polar bears and stuff like that because the Inuit in those days, before Inuvialuit and before they started recognizing the Inuvialuit and the Inupiat, we were one people. We were Inuks and then or Inuk, and then people like how we say today we are Inuvialuit, well, they were Inuit. So all they knew and read about was Inuit. And of course, the Inuit, they relate them to like polar bears and igloos and stuff like that. So they learned stories. They used to tell them stories. They used to ask questions like, do you have igloos in your town? Do you have polar bears in your town? So, you know, history like that. So that's why it's important that you teach the kids right from, like in the East Nordic, they teach their kids right from the day they're born. They teach them their language and their culture, you know, and I think that's so important. They got to start doing that. They do that, they're starting to do that in the schools now, which is good, but it has to continue in the home.
It does.
Yeah.
Start at the home.
Yeah, and some young people today, like my granddaughter, for example, she, and even today, what little Inuvialuit I could remember and what little Gwichin I could remember, I speak, I tell them, Ali, Ara, Daima, Jindi, you know, Rindi, and stuff like that. I speak, one sense I speak Gwichin, another sense I speak Inuvialuit, and, you know, and they understand. So teaching them where they come from and their values is so important.
You know what I say every day now? Suna, Suna. Someone say, Margaret. So no. Some people it just catches them off guard. I grew up speaking these terms every day, and then it went away. And I told my husband, I was like, I think we have to start doing this again. Just make it a regular thing. So today, my manager said, Margaret, and she's not Indigenous. She's not from the north. She's like, Margaret, and I was like, Suna, Suna, and she just paused for a second and carried on because she caught on very quickly that I was talking like I was saying what.
The interesting thing about some of the churches long ago is a lot of them, the ministers that we had, they were so immersed in our culture and language that they learned our language, and they used to have church in our language, which was really good. I think there's a few in the East that can still, it's more prevalent in the East than it is here, because in the East Nordic it's a given language, whereas here you've got different cultures, you know.
You're going to have to teach me how to say a prayer. I will want to learn. Yes. So is there anything else you wanted to share before we end the show?
I just think that, you know, like, if you want to learn a lot about your culture, is pay attention to your elders, listen to the stories, keep whatever knowledge you have, and if you have questions, always ask someone. Don't just say, I don't want to listen to boring stories. That's the thing these days. A lot of young kids, they're so immersed these days into their cell phones, their games. They got no time to sit and listen to elders. They got no time to sit and listen with their families. Whereas in my days,
That's all.
That's all we had to do. That's all we did was we had to stay home. We had TV from 7 to 11. We didn't have the remotes. We didn't have the Netflix or the smart TVs. We had to run to the TV and shut it off.
Yeah.
You know, we had to run to our telephone to answer it. We had to run down the hall, run down the road to Northern if we wanted to see somebody. You know?
I appreciate those days with the internet going away here in Inuvik.
Yes.
I've never been happier.
Oh,
I'm so I say I'm like an old soul, but like when I was going, like I'll just say when I was in Husky Lakes and I used to sit and listen to stories, and then late at night when they would tell the scary stories, I wish there was such thing as headphones, because I used to just, as a kid, you just plug your ears and sing a song and try not to listen. But everyone long ago used to just sit and tell stories and have good food, lots of good food.
And just I wanted to share with you too. I think the best memories that our family has today of us growing up is all our memories that we had going to the whale camp. Yeah. That's
you guys spent a lot of time out in the whale camp.
Yeah, that's something that carries on with us today.
Every single summer. Where's your whale camp?
Well, our family whale camp is at Baby Island. It'll always in our hearts be Baby Island. But I guess we had a big tragedy in 2008. When we lost the biggest matriarch of all, my father.
Yeah.
He was the one that made sure every year we had to go to whale camp regardless. And in 2008 he was going to make his trip.
That's okay.
He was going to make his trip down to the island that he taught us to love, the tradition that he was going to carry on with us forever. He was going to make his trip down there, and you know you can't tell an elder don't go. You can never. That's like insulting them. That's like talking back to them, right? So you know, circumstances we couldn't help.
Yeah.
So growing up and going to the whale camp for, you know, like I couldn't wait till my grandchildren got old enough. We bring them out now today. This was the first year that my great-granddaughter went out, and it was hard because like, holy smokes, and I was thinking, how did those elders do it longer with 15 kids out there, you know, and here we got one little one and we're going crazy because, you know, So
I saw Leslie's post about how she had anxiety about letting her daughter go, but she said she had to let her daughter go.
You know, you got to teach them that young, and that's the thing with us going to our whale camp year after year. The kids, we looked forward to going. If it rained, we cried because we're not going anywhere. My dad used to get mad at us and say, "Crying's not going to help you. It's not going to stop the rain. We can't go today." So you know. And that was when we were going in the bush, but then we started going to whale camp, and every year, I swear, you know. Like,
so it's Baby Island is the whale camp?
Well, it's they call it Baby Island because it's the smallest of the islands that people go to, but in Inuvialuit, I think it's called Uvavik or something, Uvavik or, I can't say it, it's too many R's rolling in your tongue, but the elders, there's a lot of, all the whale camps that are in our area, they all have a special meaning to the elders. You know, my aunt got married at Kendall Island. There's people that were buried there. So, and that's where all the schooners went. If you see pictures of the schooners at whale camp, that's the whale camps around Baby Island and Whitefish Station and Shingle and Herschel. Yeah,
so you guys load up on your fish for the whole winter.
Load up on our fish and our whales, you know, and it was hard the first couple of years after my dad left, you know. 2009, we all went down, made the trip to Baby Island, the trip that my dad didn't complete, we completed it for him. And then in 2013, my sister, this is funny, my sister Judy wanted to carry on an old tradition where she said, we used to hear stories of people getting married at whale camp. I think I'll get married here.
Wow.
So in 2013, were you there, Dave? Okay. Anyways, in 2013, my sister wanted to have a traditional wedding, so she just
how nice
got married at Baby Island. walked from the muktak yard with our muktak clothes, and that's tradition. You know, we never had no suit and tie or go change your clothes and put your fancy dress on. We had our muktak atikluks and muktak clothes, and she just said, "Come, be my bridesmaid, and come be my best man." You know, so there's your tradition, and you know, and then it's hard sometimes when you have people, your family living down south. It's hard for them to come every year. So you know, you take pictures and then you share your food with them. That's one thing. Must go back to talking about elders again. One thing that they taught you is always share.
Always share.
Always share. You know, and my dad instilled that in us, that you always share. You never, you know, try to be greedy for your food. Even if you spend $1,000 on gas and this cost you, you know, $2,000, still share. Yeah. You know, because that's what they were taught by their parents and their grandparents, is to share.
My husband was taught.
Yeah.
Like, because he's a hunter still, a provider, and it's always important to share with the whole family. Yeah. Yeah.
And then long ago, the Gwichin and the Inuvialuit never, like, the Gwichin never used to eat our muktak. And, you know, and then just in the last 40, 50 years, maybe more, longer, they love our food now, and we like their food.
We like their food. Yeah.
And the thing with my dad, with our family, is every year we make sure that our relatives over in Old Crow have muktak. Because they share with us, and they were with us throughout our many tragedies, our happy times, our sad times. Are always with us. And you know, my parents have been gone for a number of years, and we always keep it in the back of our head. My mother tell us, "Don't ever forget my homeland. Don't ever forget my culture. Don't forget my people." So,
and give back.
Yeah, and give back what I gave you guys. Give back to them.
Yes. Yeah. So, we're gonna end the show, and I want to thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we finally got to get you on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to have you on again and to hear stories.
Yes. Next time, maybe I'll have my other generations, my daughter and my granddaughter, and
we could make it a family.
Yeah.
A family
all in the family. You know that program, All in the Family? Archie Bunker family. We'll make it. That's what they should do. You know, is have families, and we could.
That's a good idea.
I could tell my stories of my generation. Melissa could tell her stories, because she's the last generation to grow up on Co-op Hill. Yeah. So she's got her generation of stories. I have my generation of stories. Leslie has her generation of stories, and Renly's going to have her generation of stories. You know, she's named after the thing about my great granddaughter is she's named after my Auntie Emma. Yeah. And if you know Emma, like David knows Emma, holy smokes. Emma. She knows it too, you know. Yeah. She's 2 years old, and she's already the nosiest. Can't put her iPad down.
Can I make the joke? When you're being really nosy, Emma.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I feel bad for making it.
Yeah.
But
But you know, she's like that. She's like, because Auntie Emma used to have her iPad every morning. She'd go on her iPad. That's what she does. She's nosy. Ask her what's her name. Emma. Yeah. So she's got her Inuvialuit name. And the thing is, when you name people these days, it's always good to go to the family, you know, and say, I want to name my child after Auntie Emma because, you know. And if they say yes, go ahead, then you do. Yeah. You know, and that's the thing about our people is, they're so respectful.
They are.
Yeah. You know,
we are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
So thank you for coming and being on the
and I'd love to come back and share stories.
That's a good idea to have more generations, to have different perspectives and stories.
And get more people out to tell stories. You know, like there's lots of history out there. People are just shy to.
Shy. That's the famous word. Is they're shy. Yeah. But I'm just gonna close the show now.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you all for joining in on today's episode and listening to Shirley and her telling her stories, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Wow. So when does this go on?